right, guys, thank you so much for coming today. Welcome to our second Women's Network event. This is our first panel discussion and our first live stream, so it's very exciting. And on that, I'd really like to welcome everyone who's joining us on the live stream. Last time I checked, we had over 25 countries represented there, so we're really happy to have you with us. And yeah, so today you're with us here to talk about the power of mentoring. Now, organising this event with L&D, I've come to see in these last few weeks just how much of an important tool mentoring can really be when looking at your career development. And we're so lucky here at OUP that it's supported and valued so highly. We're very, very lucky with that. So today we hope to empower you with the information that you need to make that decision on whether mentoring is right for you or not. So today we have with us our guest speaker, Rebecca Davies, who is the Head of Partnerships for Moving Ahead and our OUP external partner for the 30% Club Mentoring Programme. And she will be joined by Kira Mahon from L&D, who will be talking you through the opportunities and the initiatives that we have here at OUP to see where you can get involved in that start of your journey. And then we'll be joined by Catherine Hill and James Maunder to discuss their experiences as mentor and mentees as well. So at the end of the panel discussion, there will be time for questions. And to those who are on the live stream, if you would like to send any questions our way, please email womensnetwork@oup.com, which I'll be monitoring and we'll get some answers for you. So on that note, I'd like to pass over to Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me here today. I've been invited to talk about mentoring, which is a topic that I feel very passionately about. I'm head of programs and clients at Moving Ahead and Women Ahead. I'm part of the senior leadership team and also the strategic lead for the 30% Club cross-company mentoring programme, which OUP is a part of. before I get started, I would love to get a feel for your experiences of mentoring so far in the room and where you're at with mentoring. So please bear with me and be brave and be kind and take part. So I'm going to ask you to show me with your bodies how you feel about mentoring. So if you're here today and you have had a fantastic experience of mentoring, you're absolutely bought into the business case of mentoring, I want you to, in a moment, give me a massive thumbs up. If you're here and you've maybe open to mentoring, you've perhaps had a sort of so-so experience so far, I want you to give me a little, shoulder shrug. And if you're here and you've had a really crap time with mentoring, perhaps you had a mentor, they didn't show up to their meetings, or, it just felt like a complete disaster, I want you to, show me like this. So after 3, big thumbs up, a kind of so-so, or this. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we've got quite a nice mix actually. I can't see too many arms crossed, which is good. So we've got quite a lot of so-so and thumbs up. And I suppose it's not a surprise really that there's a mix. Mentoring is the oldest and simplest form of development, right? It's just 2 people often getting together and having a conversation. So it's something that can feel quite accessible, and it can feel like something that we can all just kind of rock up and find a mentor. At Moving Ahead, our research has shown us that actually to help kind of have impact at scale and to enable lots of people to be in this kind of category, often the structured developed mentoring program, so where we actually have structure around mentoring, can be really effective. So at Moving Ahead, we design and deliver structured mentoring programs. And by structure, what I mean is that you're taking part of a mentoring program where there's a really clear purpose, that you go into a mentoring relationship and you feel equipped to make the most of that opportunity. There's maybe some training and support around it. There's really clear messaging as part of the mentoring. And structured mentoring is absolutely on the rise. We're seeing more and more and more of this at the moment. I've been asked today to talk a little bit about the benefits of mentoring for mentors and mentees, so for the individuals, but also organisations taking part in mentoring, and particularly thinking through the lens of inclusion, diversity and wellbeing. So I know today that we've got kind of participants of the Women's Network, and often lots of mentoring initiatives that we're a part of start through the Women's Network and then often cascade out of there. So it's great to be here today. In terms of structured mentoring, where I'm saying that it's on the rise at the moment, there's also a lot of creativity in terms of mentoring and how mentoring programs are delivered. So I think Kira will talk a bit more about the different types of mentoring, but there's certainly much more now than just the traditional one-to-one mentoring relationships. We see kind of reverse mentoring, group mentoring circles, cross-company mentoring, so like the 30% Club programme where you are matched to somebody totally different to you. There's kind of gender-specific mentoring or diversity-strand-specific mentoring. So there's lots and lots of different ways that you can be involved in mentoring. In terms of the kind of benefits of mentoring and where we see it work really well, we've worked now with over 10,000 mentors and mentees and 250 organisations. So we, over the last kind of 4 or 5 years, through feedback, we've had a huge number of participants in the mentoring programs. We had a lot of anecdotal feedback around the kind of impact and change that people were seeing through mentoring. But we wanted to go a little bit further than just that anecdotal feedback from our programs. And in 2018, we launched a really robust research program with Deloitte that initially looked at the impact of mentoring on gender diversity and actually evolved over time to inclusion more broadly. So I'm going to share a little bit about some of the findings from that research and how we hope that mentoring could benefit you as individuals, but also in terms of your broader teams and your work at OUP. So when mentoring is done well, and by well I mean that certain conditions are met, for some people, mentoring can be kind of a super easy thing to get involved with. For some kind of fortunate people who are maybe really confident, can build relationships it comes really naturally and easily to them. You can actually meet somebody for a coffee and build rapport and run from there. But often people do need some extra guidance to make it really effective. So our research is based on when certain conditions are met, when we have that kind of structure, people know exactly what their roles are, there is a clarity of purpose for the mentoring programme, so not just the individual, but you understand, why you're part of this mentoring initiative at OUP, that there are 11 main outcomes that we see time and time again with regards to mentoring. And hopefully those of you that were like this, lots of this might resonate with you. So mentoring enables time to think. We're all so super busy. I was actually speaking to James just before, who's going to be joining us on our panel, and saying that, so overloaded into our inboxes and our phones, and we're constantly in demand. It's actually very, very hard in our kind of busy day-to-day lives to find that space to think. And mentoring affords that. It gives you that opportunity to actually carve out some time to almost be selfish and think about yourself as the mentee and the mentor. It provides two-way inspiration. So, in terms of the mentee and mentor relationship, we absolutely see time and time again that mentors benefit tremendously from the mentoring relationships as well. Mentors will often be saying to us that they feel inspired by their mentees, or perhaps they're having conversations that's just reminding them about things they already know that they should be doing or about themselves. In terms of diversity and inclusion, at Moving Ahead and Women Ahead, a lot of our programmes, the matching is based by difference, not by similarity. We will often look for similarity in terms of values to help with that initial connection, but it's much more around actually working with somebody that is completely different to yourselves. So the 30% Club programme, which you can get involved in through OUP, the matching there, all of the mentees on that programme are actually women, but we look to match people into a different company, from a different background, often with a completely different area of expertise and specialisms. And that's where, particularly for the mentors, they're saying, oh my gosh, I've learnt so much from my mentee. They'll often share that because they've had such honest and open conversations with the mentees they're working with, that they've learned a lot about maybe their own behaviours or what it's like for women in their organisation or in their team. So it's incredibly powerful for mentors as well. So the two-way piece is really important, I think, to kind of hold in your hearts when you go into mentoring. It's not just the mentor, giving their time and being, completely gifting in that way. We really hope that mentors will learn and receive as much. The creativity piece links really nicely to this as well. So we're really lucky at Moving Ahead that we work with the head of creativity of Google, a guy called Kirk Vallis, and he often talks about mentoring as being one of the best ways to have fresh ideas. So the benefit of actually sitting and speaking to somebody that has had different experiences to you, either through their kind of work and specialisms, or through background, whether that's socioeconomic or educational, or actually just life experiences, that's where you can get the fresh ideas to kind of think of solutions to problems. We often try and encourage people when they're going into mentoring to not go into the detail. It's very easy when you meet with a mentor to start off with, right, I've got this list of immediate things that are absolute challenges, and I've got this horrible meeting coming up with my line manager, and I need to do this and that, and I want to get this promotion, and actually we try to encourage people to, rather than think about going into too much depth with their mentors, to actually try and think of what is the nub of the issue. So it's not necessarily that I've got this specific target and I need to sell, X, Y, Z. It's maybe the root cause of it is that actually I'm struggling with confidence, the confidence to sell, or the confidence to have that difficult conversation with my line manager. And in mentoring, if you can get to the nub of the issue rather than the detail around it, that's where there's opportunity for real creativity in terms of solving that together. So do think about, if you are fortunate enough to go into a new mentoring relationship, perhaps with OUP, to in your conversations try to keep taking that step back and say, actually, what's the nub of my challenge? What's the nub of what I'm trying to solve, rather than the kind of detailed kind of information around it. It creates empathetic leadership. So this is something that we see kind of particularly, I think, on the cross-company programmes, where because of the the fact that the mentees are not kind of bound by anxieties of being in kind of line management relationships or things are going to manifest and kind of come out in performance reviews, that the mentors are able to really hear very honest and truthful experiences of what's happening for those individuals in their organisations. And through the kind of the one-to-one conversations, that's often where we really connect with each other. So it's very easy to, like today, to sit in a kind of training room and to be as a group and to have kind of messages coming at you this way about, maybe trying to learn about different perspectives or people with disabilities. But actually, if you are meeting with somebody one-to-one and having a coffee and really listening to what's happening for that person, it's much easier to have true empathy for them. We absolutely think that the mentoring helps people feel really valued. So again, in our busy lives, in the way we often work these days, that it's very easy to just kind of rocket through life, rocket through our careers, rocket through work without kind of really thinking and reflecting about yourself and without really acknowledging maybe what you are kind of doing and achieving. Mentoring is a great thing to be offered by your organisation as well. I know that the 30% Club programme in OUP, there's quite a there is quite a limited number of spaces on that programme. So if you are lucky enough to have a place on that, really make the most of it. It's a really great opportunity, I think, to have that time to think and kind of be a part of it. The transferable skills piece. This often comes maybe more in traditional mentoring where you are in, perhaps in more of those kind of specialisms and areas where you are perhaps thinking about sort of certain skills development. But we do see that, with the mentoring, I think over 91% of our mentees say they are actually learning new skills that they're taking back to their organisation. So they're actually, whether that's through confidence or understanding kind of, how to have those difficult conversations, there is a huge amount of skills development also taking place. I think in terms of kind of for all of you thinking about the mentoring opportunities at OUP, we're going to talk a bit more on the panel around, I think, how to make the most of mentoring. But my kind of ask of you, I suppose, would be that if you are going into mentoring opportunities, really kind of go into it with an open mind and an openness to learning. Go into it with a kind of enthusiasm to learn from someone that's different to yourself, and don't get hung up on the matching. So one of the things that I love most is when a mentee contacts us to say, I've just received my mentor match, but I really didn't want to have a man, or I really wanted somebody that was with a particular sort of legal background or finance expertise. And actually, through maybe some gentle encouragement, they meet and they often come back to us and say, oh my gosh, thank you. My mentor was absolutely fantastic and I learned so much from that person. So I suppose my big message for all of you is that with mentoring, there's often that initial kind of maybe risk of bias when you see that job description or you see who your person is, and it can create a lot of anxiety at the start. And I just really encourage you to go with it, because our experience with thousands and thousands of individuals is that the magic really happens when you are open to learning from somebody that's new and different to you and is maybe going to stretch you a little bit. So I think I'll hand over to Kira, who's going to talk a bit more about the different types of mentoring and how you can get involved in mentoring OUP, and then would love to take as many questions as you have afterwards, because I've got an abundance to say, but conscious of time as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for sharing with us your professional insights from Women Ahead and Moving Ahead about the field of mentoring, and also for being so complimentary about OUP as well. So it is right, we do have a lot going on at OUP with regards to mentoring, but maybe it's not as clearly defined as probably it should be. So what we want to do today is to inspire you a little bit about what is actually on offer at OUP. We've heard about the 30% Club and that fact that it's an external external program that we do have a limited amount of numbers that we can put on it every year because we're paying for the privilege. But we do actually have an internal global mentoring program that is absolutely accessible for every single member of staff at OUP. So we want to talk a little bit about that today. So our global mentoring program actually started in 2002. I looked this up last night. So we've actually had something going at OUP for a really, really long time. And over that period of time, it's, you know, the ebb and flow of our business and various offerings means that the mentoring landscape has changed quite a bit at OUP in that time. And as Rebecca said, mentoring will continually grow and evolve the different types of mentoring that we're able to offer. For example, the idea of reverse mentoring. Things that we're already starting to try out at OUP, using technology to create partnerships with people who aren't even in the same country as you. And that's something that we really want to promote at OUP. We have a fantastic global workforce, and we have many people across our workforce who are really interested in providing mentorship opportunities. So we should really be leveraging that. One of the things that we find quite a lot about going out from the Learning and Development and Talent team talking about mentoring is that we find that there's often some misconceptions about mentoring, or there's some assumptions about who it's for. So I wanted to start us off today by doing a little bit of myth busting about mentoring. So the first one on here is mentoring is for senior leaders. That's absolutely not the case. Our global mentoring program is available to any level in the organisation. And as well as that, as I've said, it's available to anybody in any country at OUP as well. You need to be nominated or ask for permission to take part in mentoring. Ideally, you'd have a conversation with your manager about your learning needs and how mentoring can support you in your development. We're not asking you to fill in any forms. We're not asking you to ask for permission from anybody. You can take part in our global mentoring program if you want to. The only place that we have nominations currently is the 30% programme, obviously because there's a limited amount of spaces, but that shouldn't stop you from taking part in mentoring elsewhere. A mentor needs to be more senior than the mentee. That's absolutely not true either. So there's plenty of opportunity for more senior people in the organisation to be learning a heck of a lot from somebody who may be earlier on in their career, who has a lot of skills and experience that maybe they could learn from. And that encourages cross-generational collaboration as well. I like this one a lot actually, because I hear this a lot. It's, I don't know what my career goals are, so how can a mentor possibly help me? I think I need to work those out before I get a mentor. That's not true either. Maybe the purpose of finding a mentor is for them to help you identify what your career goals are. And it's not just about, as Rebecca said, oh, I've got a horrible meeting that I need to plan for, I really want to get this promotion, I've got a job interview coming up. Those are all absolutely fine things to be talking about with your mentor. But as Rebecca said, it's a good opportunity to take a step back and just look at the broader picture. I need to find someone with the exact match of skills or role that I want to achieve. That's also not true either. So, although it's incredibly useful maybe to be matched with somebody who is currently operating in an area or doing the kind of job role that you might want to be doing in the future, that's totally great. But often the best learning experiences are when you're partnered with somebody who is working or doing a role that's entirely different to you, because that's where you get the greatest amount of perspective on yourself and about you and your challenges. So that's where the benefit really lies. And if you are looking for somebody though who is doing a role or is doing something that you really want to move into, then you might want to consider other options like job shadowing, for example. And I'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. I don't have enough experience to be a mentor. That's absolutely not true. A lot of our early career employees are very, very interested in becoming mentors themselves, or even the opportunities around peer mentoring and group mentoring as well means that to occupy the role of a mentor, you absolutely don't need to have bags of experience. With the 30% scheme, cross-company mentoring scheme, we do have it, because that's a traditional one-to-one mentoring partnership. We do look for people who have at least 15 years experience and are occupying roles in our senior leadership teams. But for our global mentoring programme and the types of connections we want to make at OUP, you don't need to be a senior leader and you don't need to have bags of experience. You just need to be able to listen, actually, I should add to that. What we're looking for in a mentor is somebody who is able to give somebody their time, be able to maybe challenge their perspective a little bit, and be able to share their own experiences, but for the benefit of the mentee, and not for the benefit of themselves, as it were. I have to commit to a long period to take part in mentoring. It can be what you want it to be, so you could have a very short-term mentoring partnership in whatever form that takes. You could even be just meeting somebody for a coffee every now and then. We have plenty of people in our business who call themselves mentors, but they often just find themselves having a coffee here and there where somebody needs some support. And sometimes that's known a little bit more like sponsorship mentoring. So it doesn't need to take up a huge amount of time. But what my team tried to do is provide you with the structure so that you can make it into a structured mentoring opportunity if you so choose. Okay, so hopefully that's busted some myths about mentoring for you. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the different types of mentoring as well. We do always talk a lot about traditional mentoring, and that's where the mentor is the more experienced person in the relationship and the mentee is the more junior. But the traditional type of mentoring isn't the only one that's available at OUP, and if you did want to try something different, my team, the Learning and Development Talent team, are more than happy to have a conversation about what type might suit you. We also heavily promote reverse mentoring at OUP, and we have actually trialled a really successful reverse mentoring scheme with the Dictionaries team here in Oxford. And it works particularly well for a two-way successful relationship. So the more senior person in the relationship is learning a lot from the views and the experience of the person who's more junior to them, and the more junior person is benefiting from having access or regular access to somebody who's more senior than them as well. And of course, peer and group mentoring. So this is the one that I really want to get going a little bit more at OUP because it's totally accessible. So this is a mutual beneficial relationship that you could be forming with somebody at a similar level or a similar role to you. So you might want to think about somebody who's doing a similar role to you but in another part of the business. Maybe there's somebody you can match with. And also I've lumped in with that the idea of group mentoring as well. We have something at OUP called early career coaching circles. And that's around coaching rather than mentoring, but the principle is very similar. A group of people come together to support each other through some issues or some challenges. And the same can be seen for a mentoring group relationship. And then finally, the idea of a sponsor. So this is where you might be looking for somebody to help you increase your visibility in the business. You connect with them on a regular basis, and your name is at the tip of their tongue when the time is right for them to maybe recommend you for a project, recommend you for a presentation, recommend you for something that you might be asked to do to increase your profile in the organisation. So there's the idea of sponsorship too. So you might be wondering, well, this is all well and good. How do I actually get into the mentoring programme? So we have, over the years, developed a really fantastic bank of materials that you can access on Oxford People. And we have a brilliant programme for both becoming a mentor and finding a mentor as well. And both programmes will provide you with some encouragement, some inspiration, some understanding about what mentoring is, but also the tools that you need to get started. So we've got some templates on there, for example, for planning what your objectives might be for approaching a mentor in the business. And we've got some really handy forms for your first meeting, what to talk about. The idea of talking about making sure you talk about confidentiality and where the boundaries are in your mentoring relationship. We provide all the documentation for you to get started. And we also provide a form for you to tell us what mentoring activity you're doing. And we're really, really keen to know how much mentoring is going on in the business. So our team is really happy to hear from you about your mentoring experiences, but we also provide a form for you to tell us when you are taking part in it as well. Okay, and you can find this by searching for the Global Mentoring Programme on Oxford People. I don't think there's anything else I was going to say. And here is probably the most important part of the process, which is we have 71 mentors already registered as mentors on our Oxfordshire page. They are ready and waiting to hear from you. Many people probably signed up and wondering, why is no one contacting me? So this list is only good if people are using them. So we will send a link out after this, but please do go and have a look at that list. People are spending a lot of time and effort putting in about their relevant experience, how many years of mentoring or coaching experience that they have, how they can help you and what they're interested in. Another great thing about this list is that these people are not just in the UK or the US. We have people signed up to this list from many parts of OUP. So you might be thinking, oh, it'd be great to, physically see someone every month or so. What about connecting with somebody at OUP on a regular basis who's not in the country that you're sitting in? So please do go and have a look at this mentoring list. This is only getting bigger by the day, and to be honest with you, the 71 number is probably not accurate. I reckon it's probably over 100 mentors that we have currently active at OUP. Okay. So as well as the Global Mentoring Programme, I just wanted to put it in perspective with other social learning opportunities that we have at OUP. And I mentioned at the beginning there the idea of job shadowing. So for mentoring, it's not just about getting in touch with somebody and draining their brain full of their skills, experience and knowledge so that you can become them. Sometimes you do genuinely just are really interested in knowing how to do something, a particular role, a particular skill that somebody has, and it might be an area that you're interested in moving into. So we're aware that there are different pockets of activity currently going on at OUP around job shadowing in different divisions. What we want to do is centralise that support for you so that you can access some guidance about this, so that you can go on and arrange some job shadowing for yourself. So our team are currently working on this, so stay tuned on that one. But if you're interested sooner, then please contact the Learning and Development team and we would be more than happy to support you with that one. And for coaching as well, we have early career coaching circles, as I mentioned. This is for individuals in the early stages of their career who may benefit from peer support on challenges that they might be facing. This is actually a global programme, and we do offer early career coaching circles for anybody watching on the live stream in lots of parts of the business. So again, if you're interested, contact the Learning and Development team and we will point you in the right direction. We also offer coaching for managers on all of our management and leadership programmes. And we also have a coaching learning lift as well. So if you're interested in developing your coaching skills, then we have lots of materials for it. And we want to make more opportunities on a regular basis for people to practice as well. And then finally, we do want to create a coaching pool. So this is something that's currently sort of missing from our offering. And we want to make sure that we are providing a preferred supplier list, as it were, for professional coaches outside of OUP, but also we want to collect the names of people who are trained coaches
internally at OUP so that we can make their names available if they so wish to, much like we do with the mentoring programme, so that you are able to search and find somebody who might be able to coach you. And coaching and mentoring are very different things. So mentoring is focusing on the more longer term development for an individual, whereas coaching is supporting you to maybe tackle or an issue or a challenge that you're more immediately facing. So it's kind of more shorter term development. And then finally for mentoring, so I would like to officially announce that we are going to be doing a little bit more structure around the mentoring programme. So in a couple of months' time, in May, we're going to be offering a matching process. So as Rebecca said, structure around mentoring programmes is really important. And currently our mentoring programme is quite loose. You can just choose who you want from the list and contact them. But we want to, for a period of time, do some matching. So we want to actually put a hand in and support you to find a mentor. So more information will be going out about that. But in the meantime, if you're really interested in getting involved in that, please do contact us. And there will be some process around it which we will sort out. We also offer dedicated mentoring schemes. So as I mentioned earlier, we've been doing reverse mentoring with the dictionaries team, and we're happy to do exactly the same. So if you're watching on the live stream or you're sitting in this room today and you think, reverse mentoring for my department would be fantastic, come and talk to us about it. We're more than happy to provide you with the information you need to get that started. And then finally, the 30% Club mentoring. So last year, we piloted this with 18 mentors and 18 mentees from the business. And last year, they were nominated by our executive committee. As we go into next year, we're going to be doing this scheme again. It's been incredibly successful, and we love the partnership with Women Ahead and the 30% Club. We want to continue to make this happen. So we're going to be, we're currently asking for expressions of interest. So if you are interested in taking part in this, there is criteria around the people that need to go into the scheme. So for mentors, as I said, you need to be minimum 15 years experience and sitting at board level or senior leadership team level. And for mentees, we're looking for people who are around board -1 level, and that's the typical pivotal point we see at OUP where we stop seeing the progression of women into senior leadership positions. So we're focusing on that level of the organisation. So if you or somebody you know would be interested in putting themselves forward for this, we're looking for expressions of interest. So as I said, contact the Learning and Development team. Excellent. So we're going to move on to hear a little bit more from our panel members about their experiences of mentoring. And as we said at the beginning, there's lots of opportunities to ask questions, either through the email address that Cassie's looking after, or in the room following the panel. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us for the first of its kind, I think probably first ever panel discussion we've had in this room at OUP. Wow. As far as I've seen anyway. So we want to thank you. So Catherine and James, you're both on the 30% Club mentoring scheme, but also taking part in mentoring internally at OUP as well. So my first question to both of you is, please introduce yourself and share with us why you decided to get involved in mentoring and one highlight from your mentoring experience so far.
Mm-hmm. Should I go first? Yeah. So I'm Catherine, UK Director of Financial Services. I look after a department of about 50 people, which is in group functions. I've worked at OUP for 9 years now nearly, and I've been in my current role for 8 months. Before that, I managed one of the teams within the department that I work for. I was offered the opportunity to get involved in the Women Ahead mentoring scheme a couple of days before I started my new role. So I didn't know specifically what I wanted to actually get out of it, but I've had sort of unofficial mentoring conversations in the past which have really been of benefit to me. So I figured it was a fantastic opportunity and something I definitely shouldn't say no to. Thank you.
Hello, and I'm James Maunder, Technology Director for Oxford Education. This is an amazing group of people. There's a word I'm trying to reach for, but I can't quite. But you're a lot of people to be facing at this lunchtime. So I've worked for OUP for almost 18 months, so I'm still a bit of a newbie when it comes to OUP. And I've had the privilege of being mentored either formally or informally all through my career, and I can identify a number of people who've been really instrumental in helping my development. And oddly, for somebody who works in technology, the vast majority of my bosses have been women. So I've benefited actually from being mentored by a lot of women through my career. And so one of the reasons why I like to get involved is personally I find it absolutely fascinating. I like learning about people, and I like learning about myself as well. My wife accuses me of reading self-help books. They're actually business books, but she refers to them as my self-help books. So anyway, a fascinating thing about mentoring. One of my most instrumental mentors, a mentor of me, someone to whom I was a mentee, was somebody who interviewed me for my last job. So I was at the Institute of Directors before I came to OUP. And one of the interviewees was our deputy chairman on the board, a very auspicious, talented man. And he gave me the toughest interview of my life. I came out of the interview thinking, well, I haven't got that job. But one of the conversations we had through the interview was how he liked to mentor people. So when it transpired that actually he thought I was all right and I did get offered the job, I asked this man, Ken, well, would you be my mentor? And he very graciously agreed to be my mentor. And so for the next 2.5 years, I spent about an hour a month with him, a really interesting guy in his 70s, really interesting, talented, but very generous and open individual. So a real highlight.
Great, thank you. And Rebecca, would you like to share your experiences of mentoring?
Yeah, I suppose one of my kind of personally most impactful mentoring experiences was actually, it was really small, so it was more of this spot mentoring piece. So in 2010, my then boyfriend and I kind of decided that we were going to cycle around the world, so it was quite a big expedition, and I was absolutely terrified, so I didn't have a bike even, I hadn't cycled, and it was kind of staring down the barrel of 28,000 kilometres thinking, oh my God. I obviously really liked my boyfriend at the time and wanted to put myself through this. And I actually contacted a guy called Alistair Humphreys who had been there, done that, he'd cycled around the world. And it was actually, so it was a virtual mentoring, just contacted him to say, I'm kind of in the process of doing this. It's a week before, I'm absolutely terrified, I don't want to go, how can I get out of it? And actually he just, as being that person that had been there, done that, he didn't need to even kind of say a huge amount to me, but just ask me a few questions about, well, why did you decide to do this in the first place? Take yourself back to that point in time when you agreed to do it and just remind yourself of those things and just basically encourage me to take the first pedal stroke. So whilst I've had lots of different mentoring experiences and some much kind of longer term and more, that for me was the most kind of powerful one. And it was actually just a couple of really short conversations and emails, but it gave me the confidence to do something that I was absolutely terrified about. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask Catherine a question first about getting started. So what did you use to prepare for your first mentoring meeting?
Sure. So Kira spoke to us and did a briefing at OUP for the mentees. As you said, there were 18 people taking part. So we got to hear from OUP what it would be about. I also used the resources on the Women Ahead website. So there's quite a bit of learning on there about what mentoring actually is, so that I actually felt prepared and understood the practicalities of it. And I also spent some time writing a short piece about myself, so that actually when it came to contacting my mentor, I could actually tell her a little bit about myself and just introduce and what was important to me as well. I felt a little bit more prepared when I did actually meet her, and she knew a little bit about me and I knew a little bit about her as well.
Yeah, definitely good advice in preparing, the rationale why you want to be taking part in mentoring, so that they understand where you're coming from. Thank you. And what has been the most surprising part of mentoring for you?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to one of the myths that you were talking about earlier. I thought that mentoring was going to be about looking at something that I wasn't particularly good at, an area that I needed to improve in, and work together to actually develop that. But actually one of the things that my mentor did was actually to gather some feedback from my colleagues and actually people in my personal life about when I'd been at my best, so that she could then pull those sort of common themes together. And I've now got a data bank that I can look at when I'm sort of experiencing some challenging times at work. I can actually look back at that and see the things that I'm good at and remind myself that I can do this. And so it wasn't just about seeing what I'm not very good at. Yeah.
Fantastic. And that's great that your mentors helped you to do that.
It's really good.
Great. And James, so to you, as a mentor from the mentor side, in preparing for your first meeting, what did it feel like? And how did it feel after? And would you have any advice for other mentors in preparing for their first meetings?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, there's obviously the basic research you can do. So looking at somebody's LinkedIn profile. I'm mentoring 3 or 4 people at the moment, some more informally, some more formally. If I think about the 30% Club, we shared profiles. I did a little bit of research. I think the one bit of advice that I would have is to go in with a great sense of curiosity. The ex-MD of Oxford Education, Kate Harris, used to talk a lot about maintaining curiosity in face of adversity. And I think you go into social situations with so much, so many preconceptions, so many thoughts about what somebody might be like. So I've been matched with a woman from Nationwide, an organisation that I don't know, a culture that I don't know, and I think just going in, having a little bit of groundwork, knowing what this person looked like, knowing what she'd done, maybe a little bit about what she wanted to explore. And then in that first meeting, I think one of you talked very much about not rushing into the detail. Rebecca, I think it was you. And I think that's absolutely right, because we spent a lot of time in that first session talking about why are we both here? And we both told our career stories, what led us to where we are, and we both had really interesting career arcs. And it was that foundational work of establishing an interpersonal relationship that has then set the groundwork for more detailed and perhaps more personal discussions later on.
Great, thank you. And Rebecca, what factors have you seen that contribute to the success of mentoring relationships?
I think curiosity, definitely. I suppose a few of the most important things, firstly, to really commit to it. So if you're going to go into a mentoring relationship, give yourself permission to actually make time for it. Be honest with yourself at the start around maybe what it's going to look like. Is it a couple of conversations? Is it overnight? But think about it carefully and absolutely commit to each other. Being respectful that, of course, I've said a few times about when mentoring is done well, you get all of these great things. One of the things that can be a real challenge for people is making time and honouring meetings. And there's nothing, that it's so demoralising for people when, mentoring meetings keep getting shifted or bumped and all of those great things just fall away. So commit, be yourself. So be honest about who you are. Don't go into a mentoring meeting trying to be somebody different. So be really honest. And for both sides, not just the mentors, listen and really, really listen. And don't listen with that intent to reply. It's very easy as a mentor to halfway through your mentee telling you something, you're like, oh my gosh, I've been there and done it, and this is exactly what you need to do. Be kind of patient, and sometimes that kind of power of silence to just really listen to what somebody's saying. So yeah, curiosity, listening, committing, and be yourself, definitely.
And Catherine, has your, in those early days in your new job and going into a mentoring partnership at the same time, which was probably a really good time, right?
Yeah.
What did your mentor do that really challenged you, and how did you react to that challenge?
Yeah, so one of the things that my mentor spoke to me about early on was networking and building up a network, both internally with my colleagues at OUP and externally as well, so that I could benefit from what they have to share, and also to promote myself and to make sure that people know what I can do. I said, when she told me about all of this and shared her own experiences with networking, my response was, I don't enjoy networking. And yeah, which I'm sure lots of people can also understand. But she spent some time sort of exploring that with me, and she obviously got out of me that actually, that's going back to networking when I was much younger, earlier on in my career, where I just kind of was thrown into situations, didn't really prepare for it, and didn't really get much out of it. So despite me saying I don't enjoy it and don't want to do it, she still encouraged me to do it, sort of helped me to find some situations that would be relevant to me in my role to actually go to and actually to practice, talking about myself and finding out from others. My mentor also joined me on one of the Women Ahead workshops, which was about networking. So she made sure, she came along, made sure that I went and made sure that I fully took part in it. I couldn't just hide in the corner and tell her that I'd been. So whilst it wasn't something I initially wanted to do, I have actually seen the real benefits from this now, from pushing myself and actually attending some networking events, but also identifying networking in other situations. So, for example, if there's a course here at OUP that I think that I want to sign up for, and there's the opportunity to join it by Skype or to actually go to the room, I want to go to the room to actually see who's there and meet people and talk to people, and for them to know who I am as well. So I think, something that I actually really would have shied away from for years, I've now realised I should have been much more active in it, and are doing so, and making use of LinkedIn, I think as James said as well, and Yammer and those sorts of things. It's something that started out quite scary has become quite positive.
Yeah, fantastic. So it's been a real help to you in your creating your professional profile then at OUP.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a time where, obviously, taking on a new role, as you said, I kind of needed to step out of the old role and actually for people to see me as who I was in my new role. So it's helped me to do that, definitely.
Yeah, thank you. And it can be incredibly difficult, especially as you're moving into different roles in the same organisation, for people to identify you as separate to what you were before, and identify you in your new role. Sometimes we just have those memories of what people were doing, so really helpful. And James, so how have you seen it work where people are maximising their time with you, your precious time?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, everybody's time is precious.
Yes, yeah.
And interestingly, I've had some very helpful feedback from my team recently, which basically said, please spend more time with us. So there's a note to self there. Some good reverse mentoring. So I'm really thrilled with that feedback. And actually, I think I don't think it's about trying to get through too much in any one session. I think it is about developing a relationship and having a really, I don't want to use the word honest, and I'll explain why in a minute, but a really candid conversation. I read one of my self-help books a year or so ago. It was called Creativity Inc., and it was by one of the founding fathers of Pixar. And the book is partly a biographical study of how Pixar came into being, but it's also about how do you maintain creativity in big organisations. And one of the ceremonies that Pixar engineer is an environment in which it's really safe to be candid, i.e. to say what you think. And to my mind, if we can carry that candour into mentoring discussions and really say what we think, but with a high level of care for the person that we've entered into this relationship with, that leads to really positive outcomes.
Is that also something called radical candour?
It might be.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And and interestingly, and Anne-Marie's laughing at me. Interestingly, it's something which within my team we've started doing a lot of work on. But interestingly, before we came to the radical candour bit, which is a model which I can more than happily draw up there if necessary. We were trying to be more candid with each other. I know, some cultures, I think, benefit from very direct ways of talking. I used to work for Unilever years and years and years ago, and I spent lots of time in the Netherlands. And culturally, it's very normal in the Netherlands to be really clear. Us Brits might call it brutally clear, but you never have any doubt what your colleagues are thinking. Culturally, it's typical for us Brits to layer our message with nuance and double meanings, because we really don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, and we're a bit worried that it might be impolite if we're too direct. And the trouble with that, of course, is that two people leave an interaction and one person believes one thing and the other person believes the exact opposite. So we have been trying to bring more candour into our conversations within my particular team.
I like it. I've heard that in the US office there is a document that shows what the Brits say and what they actually mean.
Exactly. Well, I once, one of my first and very influential bosses was a German lady called Ulla, and on one occasion Ulla asked me, James, what do you think of this? I can't remember what it was, and I said, it's very interesting, Ulla, and she looked me straight in the eye and said, James, is that German interesting or British interesting?
Look, very interesting.
There you go. I'll take that the way I want to interpret it.
So thinking about, having those challenging conversations politely, respectfully challenging. Rebecca, do you have any advice for a mentee in kind of taking the lead in their mentoring relationship?
Yeah, I think, there's definitely some practical things that you could do that can sometimes be forgotten, especially if it's more than just the coffee conversation, that can help the mentee feel a bit more maybe in control. So even just simple things like, reflecting on the conversation that you had last time and maybe playing that back a little bit, and also just as a courtesy, with your mentor to acknowledge what you've talked about and what you've done. I think, and then you can kind of shift to making sure that you really are in the driving seat of what's happening. So definitely that kind of reflecting and sharing, acknowledging the progress together as you go, is also really important. So continually thinking about, sharing feedback with your mentor, thanking them for the parts that they've maybe helped with, or if there are things that you want them to do more, not necessarily just time, but maybe to be more candid with me or to be more direct or whatever it might be. So to keep that feedback dialogue about the mentoring. And then something that can sound quite boring, but actually the feedback for most of our participants on programs is that if you at the outset actually contract together about how you as a pair want to work together, which might be totally organic and freestyle, and you're just going to connect ad hoc and work in a really dynamic way, and that's great if you both agree. Others might decide that actually what we're going to do is we're going to meet, this it may be 3 or 4 times over the year or every 4 weeks, and how's it going to work? Having some of those kind of contractual conversations up front can actually just make it a lot easier for everyone in the long run. It can mitigate sometimes that awkward conversation of, well, when's this ending? Or, one person might want to continue the relationship indefinitely. So, yeah, some of that contracting piece can help as well, make sure that the mentee's, driving and in control, definitely.
And we do have a lot of documentation to support exactly what you were just saying, starting out, and the kind of things that you should really have a conversation about before you commit to starting the relationship, so that you're on an even ground, as it were. So I'm also thinking about a document that we have that is available around kind of rounding up and almost celebrating successes, and have I got what I wanted from this? What am I doing now that I didn't before? So, Catherine, I want to ask you if you have recognised yet what the benefits to mentoring have been to yourself and to the business as well.
Yeah, I think it sort of carries on from what we were talking about in the previous question, and that I think it's helped me to be more confident when starting out in a new role. It is very easy to sort of, you think, I'm going to take on a new role in an organisation that I already know, so that feels like it will be easier. But actually, everybody does think of you in that previous role, and they're coming to you all the time because they know they can get the answer. So it's trying to sort of position yourself in that new role, and actually having my mentor to talk things through with and to get ideas from has been really helpful. I found myself initially in kind of meetings and conversations with people that in my previous role I just wouldn't have been in those conversations with. So I felt a little bit like an imposter to start with, and I think that was a bit of a mental block for a while. But having those conversations with my mentor, she helped me to realise that I should be there in the room. Absolutely valid that I was there in my role, taking part in those meetings and conversations. So what I think it's really benefited is for me to settle into my role and be effective in my role much more quickly than I would have been had I not had that support from my mentor. So I think it really has been a huge help. I was quite lucky that it was obviously timely at the time that I'd taken on the new role, but whether it be at that point or some other point in a role, I think it would have been really beneficial. And we've still got some months to go on the scheme, so I'm still looking forward to getting much more out of it.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And of course, if you were completely new to OUP as well, taking part in the global mentoring program, you might want to pick somebody that can support you to navigate through our global organisation and understand OUP a lot better, as well as the kind of more personal confidence boosting benefits that it has as well.
And I think I will sign up to be a mentor as well. Excellent. Given what you've said here, I feel like I should actually give something back as well.
That's exactly what we like. We do often see this lovely cycle of people being mentees, and sometimes it's better to have been a mentee before going into a mentor role, because you really understand what you're trying to do, and what mentoring looks like when it's good as well. So we often talk about the benefits of mentoring for the mentee, and we heard a lot about benefits of mentoring for the organisation and mentors as well. But James, I'm wondering, what have you seen as a benefit to you? What's been your biggest learning points from being a mentor?
So I think as a mentor, I do think mentoring is a two-way relationship, and I think mentors learn as much from it as mentees, not least about different people. One of the things which I find in a mentoring relationship is you're reminded of things that you did once that you've stopped doing and perhaps you should start doing again, habits that you've got out of that you ought to get back into again. I find it really interesting going into other organisations, and I think you can talk about networking with a capital N, where you go into a big room of people and have awkward conversations a lot of the time. But also there's networking with a small n, which is about meeting someone from a different organisation, and then you've got that connection. And I found that, I found it fascinating learning about the Nationwide Building Society, for example, which on the, they have this blue logo and it's all quite antiseptic, I think. I do have an account with them, so I'm not down on them or anything, but to go in there and discover that they're passionate, vibrant, highly ethical people with just as many interesting and sometimes frustrating processes and complexities as OUP is fascinating. But I also think as a mentor, there's a little bit of a humbling element of it, because and this is going to sound cheesy, for which I make no apology at all, but very often you're having conversations with really, really brilliant people, and you come away from it thinking, gosh, I wish I could do that, or I wish there's something there that I can learn from this individual. So what is the one thing I've learned most recently? I think it comes back to something I learned early on, again from Ulla, which is the importance of making really conscious decisions in life, and the focus of one of my mentoring relationships at the moment has been helping somebody make some really important decisions, and we're buffeted from all angles with telephone calls, with emails, with Yammer messages, and it sometimes feels as though we're not in control of our day-to-day lives, and often on a minute-by-minute basis we're not, but we must be in control of our ultimate destination career-wise. I think that's been a big reminder that's come out of a recent relationship.
Fantastic, some great advice there. That's great. So I'm going to ask you as our final question to all of you, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to interested mentees and mentors in the room and watching on the live stream? What one thing?
It's been talked about before, but to be open-minded. As I said, I didn't really know what I was going to get out of it, but I've got lots out of it. So I think if you go in with an open mind, then you really will maximise the experience.
Thank you.
Mine's really simple. It's to go for it. I think it's a brilliant thing to do. I think we live in, our lives are consumed by nonsense, frankly, by emails that just shouldn't exist, and we have to make time in our lives to develop and to share and to give back. And I bet you that any number of people in this room having a 15-minute conversation down on the fairway, I bet that would be a more rewarding 15 minutes than 15 minutes dealing with an inbox. So my one bit of advice, really simple: go for it, give it a go.
Yeah, and I think linked for me, it's and I've said it before, but I'll say it again because it's so important. Don't get hung up on that matching piece. Be really open-minded with who you're working with, and be open to learning from someone that's different, because I think that is where the magic happens in mentoring. So yeah,
absolutely. Thank you. And we've got a fantastic opportunity to not get hung up on the matching piece, because we've got those 71 mentors waiting for you to choose them. But like I said, we do want to do a matching opportunity for people in a couple of months' time. So if you need a bit of a helping hand in finding somebody. Right, so we're going to open it up now for some questions. And I think, Cassie, you might have had some emails, but also we need to use a microphone as well, so that people watching online can hear the questions. So are there any questions in the room for any of us on the panel?
Hi, I know, but can you tell that it's on? It's on. It's on. I'm just checking, because it might not be working. So you've talked a bit about not getting hung up on the matching, and that you learn from people who are very different for you. And you briefly touched on sort of mentoring for people who might be considering a change into a different role and that sort of thing. I just wanted to ask, even in that scenario, is it a benefit to go for a mentor who doesn't have experience in the area that you're wanting to go into? That was my question.
Yeah.
Are there benefits to that?
So I would say absolutely yes. There is always, I think, a benefit from, working with that person that doesn't have the direct experience. I suppose in some situations, so if, for example, we work with a lot of law firms who have very specific promotion experiences to become partners, and in some situations, in those kind of quite unique promotion experiences, I think there's sometimes a need to go for somebody that's actually been through it specifically. But otherwise, always yes. Working with someone that is outside of your comfort zone and outside of your immediate, I think, has tremendous benefits.
I was wondering, how would you handle if life gets in the way of the career of a mentor-mentee relationship?
Yeah, is that to me? So from our perspective, in terms of, we organise a lot of mentoring programmes. So from a kind of management perspective, that's often where we would absolutely encourage mentors and mentees to ask us for help and to actually share with us. So rather than kind of struggling with it, yourself maybe, and just not turning up to meetings or cancelling things, or having that sinking feeling of, oh my gosh, I just haven't got time for this, or I'm not able to do it. Just talk often to someone if there is a structure around it. But otherwise, it's just to have the conversation. Of course, life does get in the way sometimes, and the best thing you can do is own that and talk about it and share. So it's always okay to share that that's happened, and it does happen often. I think around 7% of all of our mentoring pairs break down for different reasons, whether that's life's got in the way, work's got in the way, and sometimes there is kind of personal things that happen, or you just really don't like each other. I'm saying it, work with someone different, but there are lots of times as well where, with all of the best intention and the best effort, you just don't gel, and that's absolutely fine as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, we all have lives outside OUP. Whisper it quietly, but we do. And in one of my mentoring relationships, the individual that I'm working with suffered a bereavement before Christmas and obviously had to cancel a meeting, but we replanned it. We had we've established that candid relationship. So I think we feel quite comfortable in saying, I know we're scheduled for next week, but something's happened, can we move it out a week? The other thing that I would urge actually is in the early sessions about setting ground rules and also talking about what is it that we're mentoring about, because it might be about something that is really strictly related to work, or it might be something that involves broader life. I won't betray any confidences, but a couple of the mentoring relationships that I've been involved in have gone into some really quite personal areas because they're dealing with that when life outside work impacts life inside work, and big personal decisions that impact on work and big work decisions that impact on life. And talking about Ulla again, one of the other clearly influential woman, but I did work with her for about 9 years. But one of the things she was very keen on was about bringing your whole self to work. What we have to be effective in this life is this physical frame and whatever goes on in here. So we need to maximise that for all the things that we want to do personally.
Yeah, thank you. And of course, you may enter into a mentoring relationship, and like you said, you find that it's just not working. We also often find that people enter into relationships and actually it's not the right time for me mentally, emotionally to be taking part in mentoring, and it's not actually supporting me. So we do have a troubleshooting guide that's on Oxford People as well, that provides you with some tips on having those confident conversations about, I'm sorry, thank you, but this isn't working for me. And it's just a respectful conversation. It's not, I don't like you. It's
sometimes it can't.
just having that confident conversation, sort of wasting anybody's time, and they're not expecting to meet up with you every month. Okay.
So this actually leads on quite nicely to an email that I got through, which is when one of those relationships is seeming like it's breaking down, is there a formal kind of closure process that you would recommend? So I know you said obviously you got the troubleshooting tips. Maybe just shed a bit of light on that for
we do also have a document that supports in ending as well, so the kind of wrap-up conversation you might want to have at the end of a mentoring relationship, and that is also on Oxford People as well. But any other tips on endings?
I think just coming back to the candor point, be clear about the fact that, okay, we're ending this now. I'll still say hi to you on the fairway, or we'll still have a coffee occasionally, but the formal bit is ending. I mean, I think on the mentoring relationships that run into trouble, I mean, I think maybe some of those need to end. I mean, I think that's almost the most fascinating form of relationship. Why? What is it? The mentoring relationship needs a mentor. Why is that happening? And one of the things which I often do at the end of not all of them, is just check, is this still working? Are we both still getting value out of this? And I think keeping it candid, keeping it respectful, but keeping it curious, I think gets us to a good place.
Yeah. I've got a question for Rebecca, if that's okay. Because obviously the Women Ahead scheme is for a 9-month period. Do you find that many people do continue to have that mentoring relationship afterwards? Because I think it's something that I would benefit from, and if my mentor is keen to do that, then I'd like to continue to meet with them.
Yeah, it's a good question. So,
the reason for that project we do structure around 9 months is that
we're recruiting mentors and mentees from a large number of organisations, often at very senior levels. So there is in order to kind of have people taking part, it needs to be for a defined period. If people often can't kind of put themselves forward for an indefinite amount of time, And often mentors, so Michael Cole-Fontaine, for example, he's chairman at BNY Mellon, and he's been a mentor on this programme for the last 4 years, and he does that because it's part of his personal development plan, so he wants to be learning from mentees and a new person each year. So that's the reason we sort of have the 9-month structure. Yes, we do have people that continue. How we manage that is we kind of have a quiet message of, if through mutual agreement together you both choose to work together, go for it. But the headline message is that we do actually on that programme help the relationships to close down. So we do actually have quite a formal process, again, just to make it really accessible and to avoid the really cringy moments that do happen where one person wants it to be something and the other one doesn't. So we, just to make it easy for everyone, because this is at scale, we do have a formal close. We do monitor who continues afterwards through, so we have usually just shy of about 20% that continue longer. And maybe just building on the sort of closing piece, so one thing that we try to do where it is kind of has come to an appropriate end, so it's not through a something gone wrong end, it's an appropriate end to the relationship. Something that we think is really important is that you actually set some objectives in that meeting for going forward. So often it can sometimes feel like it's ending on a bit of a downer unless you have a forward-looking conversation as well, and to kind of really think about, well, this is what we've learned together, and therefore this is the so what, and this is what we're going to do going forwards, separately with maybe the check-in piece as well. Can be quite nice.
Yeah, thank you. I can imagine for a really fantastic relationship, it coming to end, might also feel a little bit of sadness as well. But I certainly hear about many people across OUP who still connect, for a coffee here and there with somebody who might have mentored them previously. So, great.
This is for Rebecca. I was just interested to know how you measure the success of your programme and kind of how you have adapted it sort of year on year to get the most out of it.
Yeah, so for the programme that OUP are part of, and that's just one of kind of many different projects we have, so for that programme the ultimate aim is around, we're trying to have more women in senior leadership roles, so there's a really clear goal. Obviously that's quite a long-term aim. We've been managing this programme, this programme's been going for 5 years now, so what we've got is we've got a framework for measuring over the 9-month programme. We look at kind of 3 core areas. So one is around just engagement of mentors and mentees, how many meetings are people having, are they coming to the learning sessions, stuff like that. And the second 2 pieces are more around what skills people are learning that they're taking back to the workplace, and then the personal experiences. So we do gather a lot of feedback around more of the personal storytelling, the case studies, and there's kind of short-term measures that we believe will kind of indicate to that longer term success measure of there are more women in senior leadership roles. We do ask questions and have measures around promotion. So, for example, Pearson, that part of the programme last year, 6 out of 10 of the women that took part were promoted, so that's a really kind of easy and obvious, fantastic. But mostly we actually have these kind of short-term measures that will lead in the longer term. One of the things that we're working on at the moment, and always open to ideas on, this programme works because we've got 108 organisations that are taking part. It's a not-for-profit programme. It works collectively because we have brilliant partners who contribute to how we manage this programme and how we learn from it. We're currently looking at the kind of longitudinal measurement piece and the alumni element as well. So we want to stay connected to people that have been on the programme, that have then maybe gone on to different things. But that has a lot of challenges. We've got 2,000 people on the programme at the moment, people move to different roles, etc. So so we have quite a formal framework, but it's short-term measures with indicators to that long-term aim. Yeah.
And of course, for us in understanding Pearson's success is really important, and I hear that they win awards a lot at the 30% club.
Well, they won the organisational award. So we love awards, and most of the people that we're working with love a bit of competition. Yeah. So actually on the 30% club programme, it's a lot of sort of professional services and lawyers and banks, etc. So we do have awards, and Pearson have they really go for it. So we try to encourage organisations, and things like this is great. OUP are kind of absolutely leading in terms of it being more than just joining this kind of big sort of high profile programme. We want it to be something that, because whilst there can only be a few people involved on this specific project, that this is something that can maybe be a platform for more mentoring, for learning from the 30% Club by, sharing the messages that we're trying to share from there. So it's, yeah.
Great. And they recorded in their annual report recently that they have 100 active mentoring relationships. We can beat that. Let's make it happen.
I'm just curious, because I suppose is that a competitor?
I guess,
yeah.
Certainly is.
Yeah.
We do have conflicts on the 30% Club programme.
Organisations say, well, I don't want to be matched to this company, and I don't do that.
Yeah. Pearson was ours.
Those were
Excellent. Well, one more question.
Hi, my question is for Rebecca. You did mention that don't get hung up with your matching, but I just wanted to know, I'm just curious to understand, how do you actually match mentors and mentees under 30% Club? Is it randomly done, or do you have any kind of parameters that you match?
Yeah, no, it's not randomly done. So on the 30% Club programme this year, we actually had a hybrid approach. So usually at Moving Ahead and Women Ahead, majority of our programmes we actually manually match with a committee, and depending on the project or the client we're working with, the aim of the programme, we decide kind of at the start what's the criteria for matching, so how are we going to do this, and then we match with committee, again thinking about having diversity in that room. So it's very easy if you know the participants or through reading profiles to be, oh gosh, this person must be with that one, and etc. So we actually at the start set quite clear guidelines. On the 30% Club, because it is so vast, so there are 2,300 odd people on that programme, we actually this year had a matching algorithm which we've developed and built this year. We manually matched 550 pairs, and then the rest were done with the algorithm. So we're actually going to track the kind of matching of each, so that's going to be quite interesting for us. The criteria on the 30% Club programme that we look for is we do have to have clear blue water in terms of experience. So mentors and mentees complete a profile, we ask a lot of questions, but ultimately we understand the experience they've got, their areas of specialisms, their values, so we do values-based matching. But then we actually try, as I'm saying, on this programme, because it is about ultimately inclusion and diversity, we try to match with difference, but values-based alignments. So years of experience, location comes into it. We haven't really talked about virtual mentoring, but in the matching, when people receive their matches, it's something that on the 30% programme you are sometimes matched to somebody that's in a different part of the UK or sometimes different part of the world to you, and that can create those maybe immediate sort of biases as well of how can I possibly have a meaningful conversation with somebody that's sitting in a different place to me. So there is an option to choose that you only want face-to-face meetings, but yeah, we do consider the location as well, and actually ask people, are you open to virtual learning? It can be so effective. Don't shy away from the virtual conversation. So we've had mentors and mentees that have said, that they've had their most kind of valuable, impactful conversations where they haven't been distracted by, the coffee shop environment or what people are saying. They've been able to, I'm a person, quite a fashion. I take a lot of notes, but I feel embarrassed to do it when I'm in person with somebody. So I find that if I'm actually having, that my coach actually is in Australia, so all of my coaching is virtual, and it's great because I'm often in my pajamas and I'm sitting at home, and it's Australia, so it's like 7 a.m, and I'm furiously taking notes, and for me that helps me retain what we've learnt. And I find that I'm more candid when I can't see, when I'm not there in person. I find it easier to be, candid. So
yeah, there are definitely benefits to virtual mentoring as well, and that's absolutely something that we want people to sign up for at OUP. Like I said at the beginning, we need to leverage our brilliant global diversity that we have at OUP in our mentoring relationships. And we will definitely be taking a similar sort of approach to doing our matching process. In a couple of months' time, we're going to be asking people about those sort of preferences that Rebecca just mentioned. So we'll take a leaf out of 30% Club mentoring scheme.
And actually, you can find out whether our algorithms worked or not.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you two were matched manually or by the algorithm.
Let's find out. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think we've come to the end now. We didn't actually want to keep you for a whole 2 hours. We were just being very ambitious. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming.